Hey there, and welcome to another Nerdy Reviews. I'm the Absolute Nerd. Today, we're going to be reviewing Gundam Build Divers. Now, if you haven't already, if you're watching this on Twitch, make sure to follow me on my Twitch channel. You're watching this on YouTube, like the channel, like the video, subscribe to my channel, leave a comment down below. I want to hear from you guys. What do you think about this series or my opinions on it? Let's just jump right into this here. So, like I love to start things off. Let's just talk about the story about this series. So this series is basically about two friends, Riku and Yukio, who finally make their debut on the hottest game around the entire world. That is Gundam Battle Nexus Online. Or, I'm sorry, Gunpla Battle Nexus Online. They come across and befriend a mysterious girl that they rescue on their first day on their adventure, and then we basically follow their adventures in this MMO. That's the base level of the story. However, this story does evolve throughout, but not by a whole lot. Now, this is a 25 episode series that first aired in Japan back on April 3rd of 2018. Now, this series is very similar to a lot of the Build series, or Build universe is how I want to kind of call it. It's very separate from the Gundam universe or Gundam franchise, but at the same time, it is part of the Gundam franchise. It's a little bit weird. I've seen some people have a conflict with this series, like I've always been mentioning. Well, kind of not always, but someone mentioned in the previous Build reviews. But with the Divers series, though, it takes a very similar concept that we're already familiar within the Build series or Build universe, but takes it at a different approach. Now, again, similar like what we've seen in Build Fighters, because Build Fighters is in its own universe and Divers is in its own universe, so we got to keep this in mind. So very similar to Build Fighters, much of what happens in Divers takes place in the, well, not in the series, but what we have is the real world that utilizes a game or some kind of system to bring our Gundams to life. Now, in Fighters, we had some kind of like gaming system that allowed you to bring your little Gunpla to life and they fight, right? In Divers, however, very, very different, but similar. Rather than using a fighting system, literally you're taking your Gunpla, you scan them, and then you basically play them in a Gundam MMO. That's basically it. Again, similar concept, different approach. So in this case here, we're pretty much dealing with an actual MMO in the Gundam franchise. I want to say it's different than what we've seen before, but it's not exactly. More or less with the Build Fighters, it's kind of like a toy coming to life. Now we have a video game instead, and we are having an MMO. So this is the first in the Gundam franchise that we are dealing with a MMO series, or almost like an isekai, almost. Now, the biggest thing that was very interesting when it came to this series, I've already mentioned MMOs, was furries. This is the first Gundam series to actually introduce furries as well, but it's not like in any negative sense. I'm not talking bad about the furry community or anything like that. I don't have anything against them. I just thought it was kind of interesting when we first started off this series with episode 0. You see Rommel. I'm going to talk about Rommel in just a little bit, but it's kind of like, and I say furries, but it's very, very loosely put because it's basically kind of like what you do in MMOs, where you have character building and you have a lot of different kind of characters. Very similar to that. I think about it. So in the world of Gunpla Battle, you basically have different kind of characters. We've seen some characters that kind of have like, like the traditional cat ears and cat tail. We see kind of like a halfies where we got ears and tails. We get some full on ones where they're like legit like full on creatures or beasts, basically like half human, half creature. So we kind of got that going on in that sense. The way I look at it though is very much like any other traditional MMO that you would play in real life. Similar to World of Warcraft, you got characters instead of just regular humans, but you got like elves, dwarves, the Tauren, or even orcs. This is the biggest example itself too. So you kind of got these either kind of going from the vanilla of humans to kind of like stemming out, and then we go with a full on different type of a creature or different race. Also, another good example about this too would be similar to Final Fantasy XIV, where we have a couple of races that are completely different from the traditional human. I think the one that's going to stick out more, and it's more akin to what we see in Divers, is the Mikote, if I'm saying their name correctly, which is the cat people. So this is, again, an interesting one because we have like different kind of characters. A lot of the characters that you see in this series too, either they're using like skins or costumes of characters that we're already familiar with. So be it that they're from like a previous Gundam series or a alternative color or just something completely different. So kind of interesting with the characters that we see. Now I kind of want to bring this one up right now because Rommel is the most interesting one of the bunch here. As you can see right here, Rommel is not your traditional type of animal. I was kind of weirded out what he was. And I had to look this up. It bothered me to death here, but he's and I cannot enunciate this word, but he is a
Ermine Stout.
Again, Google Translate, could you say that again for me, please? I couldn't quite catch you there.
Ermine Stout.
An Ermine Stout. I was kind of curious what an Ermine Stout was, so I looked that up. Furthermore, I'm like, oh my god. And it makes sense with a lot of the characters, how they kind of, like, a lot of the female characters, like, they interact with Rommel here. But look at this thing. Look at this thing. It's so cute. This little guy. Look at this little guy. He's so cute. Oh my god, look at that little guy. Best one, I think, is this picture right here. It's just being a little bit silly, but yeah, I thought I've never heard of this creature before in real life. So I was kind of like interested, like, what is this thing? What is it? I just wanted to point that out. It was just something that kind of stuck out with me when I first had watched this series and go like, what is Rommel? What is he? I could not figure it out for the life of me what creature he was. But I just want to point that out. It was something just funny and silly, you know, with the whole furry approach within the Gundam franchise. This is new. MMOs and furries, or furries and MMOs. It's almost unheard of, well, in the Gundam franchise at least. Unless you count Gundam girls, but I don't. Anyways, so I kind of want to move along here. Now, with our previous series, which was Gundam Build Fighters Try, we actually have the same director, so it's going to be interesting. These 3 series that I'm going to be talking about that rounds off the Gundam franchise with Gundam Build Fighters Try, Divers, and then Divers Re-Rise, we have the director Shinya Watada. So it's kind of interesting that I'm going to bring him up is because previously with Fighters Try, we had this very lighthearted kind of shonen-esque anime, very straightforward, very fun. And that's pretty much, he brings the same things that he did with Fighters and he brings it into Divers, just in a different atmosphere. Again, similar concepts, different approach. So Watada brings in much of what this series, and what is really, really enjoyable about this series, is a lot of the pacing and then the action. I feel like this series with Divers was more of a upgrade and a very much a learned lesson from Try. Not saying that Try did a whole lot of things that were wrong or anything like that, but I felt like with Try, there could have been a lot more different types of improvements or different approaches. So Watada took whatever he learned from Try and placed it into Divers. He really, really finessed it and worked out it to make it a lot more. So again, like I mentioned, it was a lot of that pacing and the action. Alongside with a lot of the atmosphere, which is very lighthearted. Much of this series is basically following the day-to-day adventures of Riku, Yukio, and Sarah, and many of their other friends that they meet along the way. Of course, there's going to be some fun little action sequences every single, not little, but there's going to be fun action sequences every single episode, so there's nothing really that we're going to be missing out. A lot of it, I feel, is just well-paced, well done, lighthearted and funny a lot of the times too. I love a lot of the characters in this series. Everyone's just flat out enjoyable, at least in my opinion. So I mean, like, it depends on how you want to look at it too. I'll just kind of mention it. I'll mention this in the negatives itself, but I want to just like kind of walk back a little bit more. And going right back to Watada, I feel like a lot of what he's done, again, just upgrading the series. So he took what worked a lot in Try, placed it into Divers, and then added much more towards it. So we kind of get a little bit of that shonen-esque, but it's not truly like a shonen. We get a lot more of this slice of life with our characters, and we get, of course, a lot of the fun action portions of it too. Again, I really love a lot of this lightheartedness, a lot of fun and funny moments throughout this entire series. Different than what you would normally see from any other Gundam series in the Gundam franchise, sans anything in that build universe, build series setup. So, I really do like this. This is, again, a breath of fresh air after months of very, very depressing stuff or serious material. At times there could be some funny moments, but for the most part, you know, the build series is really refreshing. Some fun things I want to point out here. Of all the characters, Magi, which I don't have an image for him or anything like that, he is straight up like from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I think this added a plus for me, even though he was the homosexual character in the entire series. But he was such a funny and great character. I really, really liked him a lot, especially at his character design, because I watched him like, did Watanabe literally just like lifted a character from like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure and just placed it into Gundam? So not only do we have like furries and MMOs that are brand new, now we have a JoJo's Bizarre Adventure character in here. What's up with this? This is a series that's bringing a lot of news that I've never seen in the Gundam franchise. Again, nothing with the furry community. I got nothing against those guys there. I'm glad to see kind of a different approach with MMOs, but I'm sorry, the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure-esque character really wins it over for me. I love JoJo, but we're not talking about JoJo here, we're talking about Gundam, but still, they put a little JoJo into my Gundam. Put a smile on my face. Magi's a fun and great character, and I love his voice actor too. Fantastic voice actor. There's also a lot of cameos and a lot of like references, kind of like I mentioned earlier with the character designs that you see throughout the entire world, right? So there's a lot of inferences of like characters from Gundam series, of course Gundams Gundams and mobile suits of previous series, just like how Build Fighters and Build Fighters Try has done beforehand too. But I think the biggest one here is it's more prevalent in this series and then going forward with Re-Rise is Patrick Colasaur. I'm not too sure if Watanabe had a huge thing for Colasaur or not, but apparently it's kind of like a Where's Waldo in every single episode. There's a Patrick Colasaur in every single episode of this series. For those who don't know, though, Patrick Colasaur is a side character in Gundam 00. He's basically referenced, or even fourth wall breaking reference as a character who will not die. Literally. But that was just pretty much it. I do want to say that this series, unlike the Build Fighters set, where there's so much shoving Gunpla in your face, it's not even funny. Divers kind of takes it a little bit back from that. So it's a little bit more relaxed with that. I'm not saying that they don't keep talking about Gunpla and how much they love Gunpla or anything like that, or even the video game itself, Gunpla Battle. It's not too much in your face where it's like a product placement with the other two series. This one's not too much of that. So that's at least a little bit of a good news for both fans and non-fans alike. I do want to talk about a couple of negatives here, and it's like I kind of mentioned it earlier too, and I was trying to avoid it. So with this series though, primarily, so here's the big if about this series. If you are not a fan of, like, and I consider this isekai, right? I had a little bit of a conversation with my friend saying, like, it's not an isekai because an isekai is basically a character dying and then resurrecting into a video game. I consider isekai as characters who either get stuck or comatose or just focusing more so on a video game element with characters that are actually in real life. You can almost akin that, I think the earliest one I would say is like Dot Hack Sign. Other examples, whether it be a bad or good, would be kind of like SAO or Log Horizon, those sort of things. That's what I think of as like an isekai itself. Maybe not a true blue isekai like where characters like die and get resurrected or whatnot, but that's something completely different. I still consider this an isekai. However, if you don't care for anything of how I describe what an isekai is or what a true isekai is, if you want something much more serious, especially more in tune with Gundam itself, like actual war drama, stay away from the series. This is a series that's not for you. Like I mentioned before, this is a very lighthearted series. It has a lot more fun with it. There is action, but the action is not going to be on the most like life or death or anything like that necessarily. It's just all around good fun with this. I would just say with the build universe. So this is something that does not sound fun for you at all, or it sounds like you want to watch. I'd say stay away from this series. Other than that, what makes, again, I really, really love this series. I really enjoyed it a lot because of what I've just mentioned to you. It just makes it a lot more fun, a lot more relaxing, and it's very welcoming to a lot more fans too. I feel like whereas the Fighter series or Build Fighter series tries too much to shove Gunpla in your face, this one takes a step back, does show you a little bit, does put the Gunpla there, but not in your face like that, right? And it's very much more relaxing with it. It's more welcoming to both, I feel, fans and non-fans alike. Also more appealing towards gamers too, in a very small sense. But I really do like that. So that said, I don't really have a whole lot left to talk about the series without spoiling stuff. So here's your warning, guys. I got the spoiler banner going on here. I have some small spoilers to talk about, so might want to skip maybe like 5 to 10 minutes because I'm going to be talking about some things about the final episode here, and of course my favorite mechs of the series. You're going to want to jump ahead towards the I'm new to the Gundam franchise, should I watch this first? So that's what you want to jump off to. So with that said, let's go ahead and begin with these spoilers here. There's not a whole lot that I have, again, to talk about spoilers in this series. Primarily, the only thing I really want to talk about spoilers is like the final episodes, the just overall like the kind of like the build up to it. So from the get-go of the series, when we meet Sarah, we kind of had a funny feeling. I mean, like, it's really Captain Obvious. There's something up with this character. I always attribute Sarah when I was first time watching this series more akin towards like Tsukasa from Dot Hack Sign. That's why I kind of mentioned that. And then we later kind of find out about the Els divers and stuff like that, and it was very much a different approach. But it was kind of weird because, you know, Els diver exists and it's causing fragmentation and bugs and errors in the Gunpla battle world. And I felt like the build up to it was just nice, but then when we get to the final episodes, it felt very rushed and very weakly established. What I mean by that is that, okay, so we got the idea about what's wrong with Sarah, like what she's causing in the world. We know the resolve for it, and we know there's like, you know, a percentile, but a lot of the characters are like, no, we're not going to take a chance and stuff like that. And just, I feel like a lot of the characters at this junction of this part of the series starts becoming very hypocritical of who they are and what they keep talking about when they talk about the love of Gunpla and Gunpla battle, right? We find out that Sarah is an Els diver created out of the love and adoration and the admiration of what Gunpla brings to the lives of people, of many people, and that she's the amalgamation of all of this. Then you get characters that like Rommel or others that say like, well, I don't care, she's going to destroy the game, we got to kill her. And that's the other thing that kind of bothers you. It's not just Rommel, there's a bunch of other characters too. But they're willing to kill off not just a character, not just some, you know, AI conscript or anything like that, but a legitimate life for a video game. That bothered me. I'm like, I can't logic that, I can't reason it, and it felt like really, really poor, weak establishing writing just to give reason for these characters to fight for Sarah. It made no sense to me. It frustrated me. So I was like, oh God, why did they do that? Because eventually some of these characters like, oh, you know, I changed my mind, or you know, I wasn't really with them. I'm like, really? Is that what you're really gonna tell me? I don't buy that at all. So it just kind of frustrated me a little bit with a lot of the characters becoming antagonists and stuff like that and trying to cause a rift, and didn't really work out. I felt it was poor writing, but everything beforehand was fantastic. I love everything beforehand up until when we actually got to the real plot stuff and like kind of cramming in, trying to give reason behind it. I'm like, no, don't do that. I want to watch a nice little kind of slice life, relaxing Gundam anime, and this was it right here. This was it. Another thing I felt too was a lot of missed opportunities in terms of theme. With Sarah and being a digitalized life, AI that was born out of love of Gunpla and stuff like that, we could have explored a lot of like cyberpunk themes which Gundam had not explored. in this series alone, like I mentioned, we had furries introduced, we had MMOs being introduced, or an MMO being introduced, we had a JoJo character design being introduced. We could have also introduced a brand new theme in this series, such as cyberpunk. So, like, what is it? What does it mean to be human? What is it if you're a digital life? Could you still have like an existence? Are you validated as a living being? Those sort of things. And I feel like this series had the opportunity to take the ball about that theme and play with it. Instead, it just drops the ball completely. And I'm like, why? We've seen in previous other Gundam series in the Gundam franchise introduce brand new things that become core elements in the Gundam franchise. I mean, we even kind of got close with this cyberpunk theme in Gundam 00, but we never really played with it too. Here's a second chance we got with this series having to play with cyberpunk themes, and we don't do anything with it. So I felt that was a missed opportunity. It was an absolute shame. I wish we could have done a whole lot more with that, but oh well. Last thing I want to talk about the final episode in regards to the final episode itself is that how much I actually loved it. It kind of does this split, right? Kind of like what we saw in the previous Fighter series too, where we got a split. Sometimes they might have done it in 2 episodes, but this episode was a split. We got the resolve for what was going to happen to Sarah and stuff like that. And after that, like the first 10 minutes, 12 minutes or so, then we got the break, and then we get the next 12 more minutes of this episode, right? We really focus on a lot of the epilogue portions. And this is something I really liked. If you've heard me talk about this in previous live stream reviews here, I really love having an epilogue with our characters. We spend so much time with our characters throughout the entire series. I want to see what happens to our characters at the end. I want to know how some of their arcs close off, or how these characters interact with each other as we wind down from the series overall. I want to just see that stuff, right? So we get that in this series. The last 12 minutes or so of this episode, we really not only get to see a lot more like that result, but we get to see them kind of like interact with each other in real life. So I thought that was super cool. Everybody meeting each other for the first time in real life. Well, not everybody, but some of them have already met themselves beforehand. But, you know, for the most part, all the other characters that we've never seen before get to meet each other together and hang out and spend some time having fun and whatnot. I really like that a lot. So I felt that was such great closure to this series. Had a lot of emphasis for our characters, and I would say that this is one of my favorite endings or favorite final episodes in the entire Gundam franchise. But I have a hard time considering the build series part of the Gundam franchise itself, or part of the other Gundam series, because they're so drastically different. It's hard for me to do that. But if I'm going to say this is probably my favorite episode in the build series, at least. Very mentionable, at least in the Gundam franchise, but I don't think it's going to hit the higher echelons. But great final episode. That being said here, I do want to jump into our next little portion in this review. Give me a moment here. And the next segment I want to talk about is my favorite suits of the series. Now, if you're not familiar with this, with every single Gundam series brought into the Gundam franchise, they introduce a whole new slew of mobile suits, Gundams, either redesigns, new battleships, those sort of things. Now, with divers, just like anything else in the build series thus far, or the build universe, much of it is an amalgamation of a lot of other suits that we have previously seen in other Gundam series. So there's not so much of new suits that we're going to see here, more or less a lot of redesigns. And so that's something that's kind of nice about these series. Sometimes I still consider that kind of lazy. I would really like to see actual newer designs, but you can't really do that if you're kit patching Gundam models together. So we get this slew of suits right here. There's not a whole lot of them. Not saying that that's the least amount, but there's a ton of redesigns, at least in this series. So the very first thing I wanted to talk about, the first one off the bat here is the Gundam 00 Sky. I actually kind of like this Gundam a lot. Now, it's funny, before watching this series, I knew about some of these suits through my now what is known as Gundam Breaker Mobile. Originally it was Gunpla Battle Gundam Warfare, or Gundam Battle Gunpla Warfare is what it was. So I was aware about this suit right here. I actually used the backpack of the suit more frequently in a lot of my battles, which has really, really long animation. But I was so glad to finally see like this full suit in the series itself and actually fight. It's kind of a cool looking 00 basically, with some little things here and there from the if I remember right, it was mixed and matched with the Destiny Gundam. But it's not a bad looking suit. I think it just looks kind of cool. Again, it reminds me of the 00 Riser a bit, but then we got these like nice little wing binders, and then the these are like basically little cannons. I'm not missing. It's been a little bit of time here, but it just has an overall nice little aesthetic behind it. I think the only thing that is like it doesn't get it too high up there. It just kind of got these weird fins is the best way I would describe it. It's kind of like a lot of these like little fin portions, and I just don't care too much for the fins. That's just me though. Next one up on our list here, and I think this one's actually a pretty cool looking one, is the Gundam GP Raz 2. This guy was piloted. I forgot his name here. It was his name is Ogre. I could have swear he had another name he went by in the series. But this suit is really, really cool. Of course, redesign of the GPO-2A Physalis from the Stardust Memory or Gundam 0083. This thing is actually a beast. It doesn't look that formidable, but a lot of its like mobility and fighting is really, really crazy and unique. A lot of beams on this guy. It doesn't look like there's beams, but there's like beams right here. Like they're like mega cannons or mega particle cannons. Like, what do we see right here? Yeah, we got the beam guns on the kneecaps right here, which are kind of cool. Wing binders. There we go. They're GNI blasters. I couldn't figure out what it was for the longest time. Couldn't figure out where this came from overall. I thought it was like a redesign of the Physalis' like backpack or the shoulder pads, right? But it's not exactly that. But much of it's the body of the Physalis. You got it looks like a head of the Master Gundam. Looks like it, but I'm not too sure. And then the backpack itself. But it's a really cool suit. Watching it in fighting and stuff like that was awesome. Love the suit at the final, pretty much. Now, as for my next suit here, and I forgot if I'm saying his name Kyo, right? Kyoya, there we go. I'm like Kyoya. I'm like, really love his final suit in this series. The H2 Magnum. Now, we don't really hear too much. We just hear it as referred to as the H2 or Dark Hound. He does upgrade it. This one is like a nightmare. It's kind of got a mix between the FX Burst, or not FX Burst, it's mixed in with the HFX, there we go. And then H2. Really, really cool. Love a lot of its designs. It's weird why I'm like, I don't like fins, but then this guy's like kind of weird and pointy. I don't like kind of like its kneecap area though. Kind of reminds me of like, again, Arios and Curios from 00. I hate things that kind of like stick out and don't look very maneuverable or anything like that. So, but this suit is super formidable, super crazy cool. I really like a lot of its actions in this series. So, next one I want to move on from here. I can't get away from those gosh darn Kapuls. So the Momokapul is actually, we don't get to see a whole lot. It's got a lot more different functions and features behind it, which I like it a lot for. It's super crazy cool and unique because it's got, instead of the beams were usually it would have like a machine gun on the arm. Instead it's got, you can kind of see it in the fingers. It's kind of like a beam machine gun. Is it beam or is it machine gun? Never really said it was physical or not. Hand beams, hand claw, doesn't really say. I believe they're beam from what it looks like, at least. She also does this funny movements where she's gonna shoot and she kind of like backs, like imagine like the hands of the Momokapul goes back like that and it blasts with the belly. I think that's just priceless with the beam shots. We don't have it here too, but this suit actually can separate a little bit. Inside of this little portion right here actually has a smaller, like a miniaturized Kapul that can fight. So those eyes in there are actually of another suit inside of this thing. I thought that was super cool and unique about the Momokapul. But I love its design. It's supposed to look very similar to a penguin. Reminds me of a penguin or a pengu from like Super Mario 64 or something like that. So I think this is kind of cool, kind of unique, nice looking. But yeah, I can't get away from my amphibious mobile suits and the couples. Just, I gotta love them. But if we're gonna talk about my favorite suit of this entire series, look no further. And forgive me, I'm mispronouncing its name, but I love my vegan suits from Age. It's the Giraga. I'm saying that one correctly here. It's not too much of a different design from the Giraga from Age itself. It's got a lot of its similar functions and features, but it has some additional things, not by a whole lot. Not by a whole lot. Unfortunately, I can't remember his name. Doji. Oh, God. Such a name. I always think of his name in like Doge, but the suit's actually not that bad. I just wish it could be used a little bit more efficiently because Doji is a very meh character. Well, not meh. He's a very redemptive character, though, but still. You're not gonna like him at the beginning. I like how he uses the Zetas in the beginning, and then later on in the series he does get the Giraga. Love the design, love the suit. Something about vegan suits, again, it's like mixing in dragon with a mobile suit and kind of making it look like a knight's armor, and that's when I kind of get in a whole mesh with this suit right here. So definitely one of my most favorite suits of this series. All right. With that said, let's go ahead and take away our spoilers here. So I hope a lot of folks come back from here. And yeah, with all that said, I want to start on our next segment here, which is I'm new to the Gundam franchise. Should I watch this first? Or should I watch Build Divers first? I'm going to say this is very similar with a lot of the other Build Fighter series or Build series I've spoken so far. Yes, I actually think you should watch this one first, if that's the case, if you come across this. This is a very easily accessible series to watch. It's very welcoming to both fans and non-fans alike here. It basically just has a lot of fun with it, has a lot of lightheartedness behind this series. Very accessible, again. The only issue I have with this series, and it almost wants me to say a no, is that this series doesn't have a lot of the core elements of the Gundam franchise, and it does not set the right and appropriate expectation when going into any other Gundam series beforehand. But like I mentioned before too, I kind of consider the Build series or Build universe different from the actual Gundam franchise itself. It is part of it, but not really a part of it. It's more like a moon that orbits around the franchise, right? So at that point, it makes it a little bit of an issue. If you watch this first and go like, oh man, this is what Gundam is, and then going into the Gundam franchise, it's not the same. So that's the only thing I would advise is that, yes, definitely watch the series because it's very welcoming, it's very fun and very lighthearted. But don't watch this and go with the exact same expectations when watching anything else in the Gundam franchise outside of a Build series. That being said, as for a overall though, this is Gundam Build Divers is another lighthearted entry, another shonen off-kiltered Gundam series that's set in an isekai-esque settings, basically. Build Divers has a lot of fun with the story and the characters and a lot of the action itself, not really worried about shoving gunpla into your face or really having a serious story. Sans getting closer to the end of the series. Because of that, I really, really highly recommend this series if you want an overall fun Gundam series and not, again, too serious or anything like that. Maybe to wean you into the Gundam franchise itself. Gundam Build Divers gets a solid, fantastically fun 4 out of 5. Now, again, if you're watching this on Twitch, make sure to follow me on my Twitch channel. If you are watching this on YouTube, like this video, subscribe to my channel, leave a comment down below. I want to hear from you guys. What did you guys think about my opinion on Divers? Did you agree with me? Did you disagree with me? Did you like this series? Did you not like this series? So I want to hear from you guys. But yeah, that's all I gotta say about Divers itself. It's, again, I keep saying the word over and over and over, but it's really a fun series. In fact, in my opinion, it's probably the best out of all the build series so far. It really competes with Try for top tier on that one. But I think because of what Wakata learned from Try and applied towards Divers, and a lot of the funness, a lot of the characters, a lot of the action and the story itself, I really just enjoyed Divers that much more. So if you're really wanting to know if I like Divers or Try or Divers more, Divers wins over Try. But that's just like a nice a step above it, right? Because Try is a fantastic series. But yeah, that's what I gotta say about Gundam Build Divers. I do want to thank you for watching, and until the next review, I'll see you guys next time. Take care.